Will Anderson from Milwaukee. Will, I want you to introduce yourself, and then we'll go around and just do introductions so you get to meet everyone here.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Commissioner Savas. My name is Will Anderson. I'm the newest city councilor here in Milwaukee. And my day job, I work down in Salem as a lobbyist. And my night job, or I guess 7 in the morning job, I vigilante doing this stuff. So excited to be here with you all.
Great. Next up is Josh.
Morning, everybody. Josh Callahan, counselor in the city of Happy Valley, and stepping in for Brett Sherman today. Counselor Brett Sherman.
Counselor Pratt.
Good morning, Valerie Pratt, Tualatin City Council.
Great. Mayor Buck.
And good morning, Joe Buck, Mayor of Lake Oswego.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Mike Mitchell, City Commissioner in Oregon City.
Right. And Mayor Milch.
Michael Milch, Mayor of Gladstone.
And Kenny.
Kenny Cernak, I'm the CPO representative, and I'll get on camera once I'm not driving.
Okay, great, thank you. Trent, turn it back to you to introduce our guest.
Excellent. I'm Trent Wilson. I'm the C4 administrator here for this group. This is the C4 Metro Subcommittee on October 16. Our first presenter today is Hallie Holmquist from Metro, here today to talk about the Community Connector Transit Study.
Thank you, Trent, and thank you for having me today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get the slides rolling here. I am excited to be here to talk about this work. It is something that we have been talking about for a while from the 2023 RTP update process, and so it's nice to be here to report back on what we've been doing with partners since then. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what we mean when we say community connectors, since it's kind of a wonky term. We are talking about smaller capacity transit, like shuttles or vans, that can be more flexible than a bus, from going off route to pick up or drop off riders to being by request wherever and whenever needed, more like an Uber or a Lyft. And in doing so, we are addressing the access and convenience elements of the vision outlined in our regional transit strategy and thinking about expanding neighborhood and destination connections in the regional network. What we won't be talking about specifically in this study is that regular or frequent bus or high capacity transit, which has been addressed by other recent work that I'll speak to in a moment. We know right now there's a lot of regional momentum around community connectors. House Bill 2017 changed requirements and increased funding for local transit options supporting new shuttle service. And more work is currently underway by our partners. Of course, Clackamas County is considering a transit development plan update. Washington County is looking to do the same. There's a lot of work done by partners that we can compile and build from for a regional strategy. Speaking of plans, there's been a lot of work that's been done regionally on other elements of the transit spectrum, which are the tools in our transit toolbox. So ODOT worked on the state rail plan update for intercity rail like Amtrak. There was the high capacity transit strategy work we just wrapped up for the 2023 regional transportation plan update. And TriMet is taking that to the next level with their FX frequent express plan for rapid bus. There's also some work right now on the regional rails future study at Metro, which is going to look at passenger rail opportunities in the region along freight corridors and potentially a little bit beyond. And then, of course, TriMet is implementing Forward Together 1.0 now and is working on 2.0 for that longer term bus, frequent bus and MAX service. And so the next step really is that regional strategy for local transit, because that will consider the work done by all these other plans for where service will be in the future and where opportunities for connections are. And then I won't spend too much time here. This is clearly something we heard from the community as a need during the 2023 RTP update, but also from you. I want to reflect a few things that we heard. We heard concern about the areas of the region that lack access to the network today and in the future, but where opportunities might exist if we think about options other than regular bus service. We heard a need to look at opportunities in the suburban and urban edge communities, serving jobs in essential destinations, connecting to existing frequent transit, providing mobility hubs at key connections to support multimodal trips between transit modes and also other modes like walking and bicycling, and looking at coordinating resources, investments, and implementation. And so then as part of this study, what we're going to do is we want to start with some context gathering. We're going to be focusing on lessons learned, both within our region and also looking at best practices, approaches in other places to really identify and tease out the challenges and opportunities. And that's so we can understand the best uses for community connectors and how to ensure they're most successful in our transit network in the region. And we want to apply that understanding to add to the policy framework established by our foundational regional plans. And that envision a bus on most arterial streets. And so that will help us explore the best way to incorporate coverage in more local area neighborhoods, connecting with destinations to meet needs aligned with our regional goals for equity, economy, and climate. And then using that framework as a guide, we're going to want to update the regional transit network vision map, which you see here on the screen. That does include community jobs connectors already. I've tried to circle them here, the sort of tan blobs on the map. These were originally identified in TriMet's service enhancement plans, which we know that Forward Together 2.0 is going to be updating. And at the same time, there's all that regional work, not only by our local partners that I mentioned, but on the RTP, the emerging technology strategy, and around corridor planning that we can reflect in updates to this map at a minimum. And then when thinking about that new lens of an updated guiding framework, that'll also help us identify additional opportunities as well, really aligned with best practices, thinking about connections fanning out and then within the current network. That will include thinking about the locations where lots of transits and other modes come together in that hub and how we can leverage that through actions together that support more comfortable, convenient connections. And then finally, we want to think about where these opportunities are most needed and most ready to deploy first, thinking about our regional goals. So that's less a pipeline than we talked about with the high capacity work and more a guidance to help thinking about the near versus later term for the 2028 RTP. And as local partners are working on transportation system plan updates and those transit development plan updates. And we're also keeping in mind that there are some new grant opportunities where shuttles are eligible that are coming out of both EPA and ODOT. The big portion of the work is we want to develop a suite of tools to support the updated vision. So we will have a final report with a list of implementation actions we can take together, and that will touch on governance, funding, and how we grow transit through the spectrum from smaller to higher capacity. We'll have a mobility hub toolkit with a topology based on the area context, outlining the features we want to strive for, and then the actions we can take to implement those. A regional parks transit development strategy, looking at how in the future we could increase access to key destination sites. A transit supportive land use plan checklist, which will complement the transportation one developed through the high capacity transit strategy work that will help us ensure that our plans are making us transit ready. And then finally, some sub-area action plans, really highlighting the key elements by county to support that local work that's coming up. A working group with all the partners shown here is supporting this work. And we will have several rounds of engagement with metro committees, whereas agendas allow, we'll be offering previews to the coordinating committees as well. We'll have some presentations to existing community advisory committees like through TriMet and business organizations. And we are looking at contracts with community-based organizations for additional small group interviews and focus group events. And then we'll have surveys for broader outreach, and we're working with staff from around the region to identify in-person tabling events, as well as a plan for tribal engagement, which we'll have more information on soon. So there are 4 key milestones that will be the major touch points And these are aligned with the start of the next regional transportation plan update. So more information about the context and framework this spring, the assessment and vision next summer, the priority and tools next fall, and then that final report and the remaining actions in spring 2026. And then so I provided ahead of time, but it's also on the last slide, a link to our website, which does have fact sheets for the community members that are interested in learning more. And over the next 6 months before we plan to come back at the next milestone in April, we are going to be working hard with the working group on the things that we'll be bringing back. We are going to start talking with transit providers about lessons learned. Get a survey out to hear more about needs that we can share, and then make sure that we're presenting to all of the groups I mentioned. So thank you very much for listening to my overview today. I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back to you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. I just want to, we have some new faces here today, so I just want to, some of you have already heard me say this, but I appreciate this. Would you define this, Allie, as really a rebranding or redefining shuttles and jitneys, such as the one in Forest Grove, the Grove Link, things like that, that have worked? I mean, is it the same thing, essentially?
Yes, and the only reason we're calling them community connectors is that was the kind of historic name in the regional transportation plan, but that's exactly what we're talking about. And those are really successful examples that we want to build from. The other thing that I mostly spoke to shuttles, but microtransit is in this realm too, and it's sort of a hot thing in the transit world right now. That's something else that we are considering, but doesn't exist right now in the region, but it does exist in other places. And van pool is the last one that really is kind of one of the key types of modes that has existed in the region in the past, and there is momentum around restarting it. So that's another one that's a little bit wonky that we'll be looking into.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask is, and if there's anyone here from TriMet, I don't see them yet, but I'll look again in the audience. You know, I sat on my first transit committee 25 years ago, and there was a big clamoring, and since then, a continual clamoring for local shuttles, especially in areas where the topography is challenging, street lighting might be challenging, no sidewalks or lack of sidewalks or gaps in sidewalks. But, you know, definitely a clamoring for shuttles. And, you know, the former mayor of Forest Grove, Mayor Truax, a big advocate. He and I spoke often about the success and the passion that the community has for the Grove Link, which is, again, kind of like a local shuttle. But as much as I've been advocating for 25 years, whether it's the Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge area or other areas, Oregon City that are challenged, Lake Oswego, Westland that are challenged with topography, it's my understanding that TriMet would prefer not to be in the local shuttle business and would like to support that with external providers. And yet that's got its hiccups and challenges. So I don't know. I would like to know what Metro's role in this would be versus what a transit provider's role in this. Does Metro have a unique role? I appreciate and agree that there's a climate benefit. I can see where the federal agencies would see a benefit to this to get people to the main networks. But I'm just really wondering why, from your standpoint, is Metro trying to assist and push this a little bit harder? Or what role would Metro have in this?
Thank you. That's a great question. There's a few things that we really see as that Metro can help push that maybe we're in a unique position to. One of the things that we've heard a lot from actually most of the people we've been talking to as an interest in the study is helping address the funding challenge. STIF is already, we've heard clearly that STIF is a great program, but it's oversubscribed, or there's, you know, more demand than there's availability. And so there is a desire to look into additional funding streams and how we can be best prepared to go after those. So that's one thing where we can support in providing some more information and help with readiness. this for just to be able to get that money. The second area is governance, which is also when you're talking about the TriMet model versus external providers and how that works in our region. That is another thing that we want to look into. Other places, C-Trans, one example where they actually are operating these smaller capacity transit modes themselves. There are other places where it looks a little bit more like us with the external providers. And so we do want to look to governance a little bit more and kind of see what models have been successful, and then within the models, what makes them successful, so that we have some guidance for how we can maybe make the system work a little bit better. And maybe propose some recommendations. I'm not exactly sure how that will work out, but that is one thing that we want to get out of this work. And so that's really where we see Metro's role. And then finally, the tools are just to be able to start having conversations to work together on what actions that we can take to support these modes. You mentioned sidewalks as one key thing. That's something we've heard about. Also, the bus stops and their condition as well, because it's not only these connections that you're making with the shuttles to the larger network, but then what's the environment that they're operating in too. So some of the mobility hub conversations, we're hoping to talk about how we can better link up and have plans for areas where these transit modes meet. And then in the sub-area action plans, that might be another place where we can start digging into some of the other key elements. And that's really just to make sure that we're supporting this type of transit as best we can where it's been successful.
Okay, great. Mayor Buck, you have your hand up.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner Saris. Thanks, Allie, for the report. It's great. We talk about this often, I feel like, around these tables, and so it's great to see Metro kind of convening this discussion. But I wanted to ask about the the planned engagement, given that this type of transit, you talked about the suburban environment, suburban fringe, whatnot, but I did not see any suburban communities at all represented in your kind of on that engagement platform with the different entities. No cities other than the city of Portland, not a suburban city. So can you talk to us about how you're going to incorporate the perspectives of the cities that you're trying to serve through this work?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. I had the same question at Washington County too, so you're not the only one that has noticed that. We have been working with the county representatives on the working group, but we're also working with the county coordinating committee technical advisory committees as well. So we are relying a little bit and I say as agendas allow, so far it's worked out that there's been room for us to come, but we've been able to connect with more staff in all 3 counties that way. And so that is one way that we are trying to get a broader review and input on this study. I will say from the community side, we are planning on going, beyond the partners that are mentioned. And so that's why we're trying to work right now. We're a little bit early. We're planning on some tabling activities more in the early next year, spring timeframe. But we've put out an ask to folks to ask what events we should be at, and we're hoping to partner to try and get our survey information out so that we can, at least from a community standpoint, get a wider breadth of participation. So I think there's kind of 2 fronts where we're hoping to get city feedback, partners through the CCC tax, and then community through targeted outreach.
Okay, is your main advisory group a technical advisory group? Is it all staff?
Yes.
Okay. Why aren't the technical committees just a part of the process? The TPAC and.
Oh, they are too. I am. We at each milestone, it's with the working group. We're having some more detailed discussions on getting materials ready to bring to the other committees. So we usually have a meet with the working group, which is a subset of technical staff, and then we bring that to the county coordinating committees, both the technical committees and then this committee and the policy committees, and then we also bring it to TPAC, MTAC, JPAC to MPAC and council as well. So there is a sort of spectrum of feedback. And then after each round, I actually take all the feedback that we've received and we bring that back to the team and the working group, and then we kind of start over on the next milestone. And that's how we're sort of trying to create a feedback loop. And then the next time that I would come to you as the agenda allows, I would also plan to bring that back to you as well. So there's sort of kind of a couple different feedback loops.
Okay. I mean, my input here would be that I find these tabling exercises to be rather perfunctory or just rather performative and not, a good way to get legitimate community input. I think there's a check the box exercise. I would really encourage you to get on the ground with local leaders in communities like Happy Valley and Lake Oswego and Westland and Tualatin. Do not leave us out of this conversation. We're going to be right back at the same place we started from, disappointed in the results. We have input to give. Our staff has input to give as well. But if this becomes a city center, Portland Metro driven conversation, by no offense to, but that's where a lot of the staff in your organization live, then you're going to leave out the perspectives of the suburban communities that you're trying to represent. And so I really, really encourage you guys to rethink how you're doing engagement on this exercise.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, well said, Mayor Buck. Thank you. Councilor Pratt.
Well, Mayor Buck stole my thunder on that one, but I couldn't agree more that you're trying to serve our local communities. We each have unique challenges, so I really feel that's vitally important to reach out to us. And on that note, on your community groups, interested parties you have that you're going to reach out to, you have several chambers, and I'm just going to advocate directly for Tualatin Chamber, because I don't think that chamber, they've been more involved with transit issues than any chamber over the last few years. I had a question on what exactly is microtransit? I feel I should know, but I don't.
Thank you for asking. My fault for not explaining. It is an on-demand type of transit service. It is essentially an Uber or Lyft, but transit. You can often call it by an app. Sometimes there are other ways, but it's still, you call it and it comes to you, and it is a what we call point-to-point service. So it's usually from one pickup location to a drop-off location. It's used in some different ways though than Uber or Lyft. Sometimes there is a set zone that it'll run in, and sometimes that zone might link up with a major transit station. So you can put some bounds on it where it's a little different than Uber or Lyft, but it's kind of the same, and it can either be a car, just like an Uber or Lyft, or some sort of smaller van.
Yeah, this is awesome. But and then my last point I wanted to make, since we don't have any transit people here, is that if you're looking at if you go down the route like we currently have, where you're using these smaller transit providers, when you're looking to funding, they constantly with the stiff money say they don't want, it's so dominated by TriMet, so give them a little more direct funding and choices. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor Milch.
I want to say I'm really glad to see that one of the things you're considering is linking up the fare payment systems, so that if somebody wants to get on one of these shuttles and get to a frequent transit bus, that maybe they can pay once and just transfer without having to go through it again, or there's some kind of coordination. I know that's all technical right now, but I'm glad you're thinking in those terms. The other thing that sometimes happens is we operate in silos and get the ideas separated. This is all a focus on transit, but you did mention hubs and coordinating transit in locations in terms of housing. I know Metro is wanting to step up their involvement in affordable housing over the next several decades. So I just hope that you will plan to put housing where frequent transit is, or try to get more transit in the locations where new housing programs are going in. But this, I see the two issues so closely connected that it's great that you're thinking about both, but don't lose sight of the other. Don't operate too far away from the people that are thinking about housing too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Ali, if I had more time, we had more time on the agenda, I'd ask you to pull that map up and just to display the areas and how the region is mostly suburban. It's not urban or centralized like the city of Portland. And it seems like, the discussion or the suggestion of governance, I think is, a little bit bothersome if it's a regionalism based, because it isn't working. And I think our transit deserts display demonstrate whether it's whatever mode you want to choose. We have vast deserts of modality options in both Washington County and Clackamas County, and it continues to go unaddressed in a meaningful way. And I just want to just say that Mayor Buck's points were well taken, as well as Councilor Pratt's. We need that service. I don't think we need governance. We just need the investments made and the dollars directed. So I'm hoping that can be focused on that, and someone step into the game. I do want to say this because we have a couple new faces here today, is that the city of Milwaukee and the city of Wilsonville, by their own separate providers, transit providers, have the best transit service in Clackamas County. I'm not saying it couldn't be better. It certainly could be, but the remainder of the county is vastly underserved. And so that needs to be addressed at some point. And I'm hoping, again, we get some other dollars to fill in. That'd be great. But thank you for your time, Allie. Thank you for your presentation, answering our questions. And Trent, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Bringing in Jamie Stasny for the next part of your agenda, which is an update on the Sunrise Corridor Visioning Project. Been a lot of chatter about that project and a lot of conversations in and around C4 and a lot of questions about what is it. And so, bringing in an opportunity here to expand on that, since C4 has been really involved with the advocacy to get to where we are today. And so this is kind of a preview as to where it's going. So Jamie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, C4 Metro. I'm going to go ahead and screen share my presentation here. All right. So many of you have heard about this project. But I will ground us in just kind of what it is and why we're doing it before we jump into where we're at in the process. Thanks for having me this morning. Sunrise Corridor Community Visioning Project is something that's been in process for almost a year now, and we're almost 3/4 of the way through the project. Project's being done in partnership with Happy Valley, Metro, and ODOT. And a big reason that those are the 4 primary partners is because all 4 of those agencies will need to adopt portions of the plan when we're done into their TSPs or comp plan. So it's really important that we have all of the key partners that actually have to adopt parts of that in line, lockstep, and in agreement with the direction we're heading. So grounding into the project area is this area here. It's Highway 212 and 224. Starts on the west side at I-205, goes out to 172nd. The boundary to the north is a natural bluff area, and the boundary to the south is the river and the properties inside the UGB. So this is the project area. And back to partnership. Just a reminder, these are the 4 partners for the reasons I mentioned, and we have a fairly typical project committee structure that we've been running: a technical advisory committee, a steering committee, although it is a cross-cutting steering committee. It's not just a group of elected officials. It includes residents from the community. It includes TriMet, business owners, public services, CBOs. We've got a rep from Thousand Friends sitting on the committee. So a whole bunch of people from different walks of life, all sitting side by side talking about the future vision for this corridor. We also have something that we haven't done before in Clackamas County called a leadership cohort. The leadership cohort is a community advisory group made up of local people from this area who want to be advocates and supporters for a bright future for this area. And so they're working really hard to advise on the project, but also to think about how we can really pick up the real work after we get done with developing the vision itself and start implementing that. So that's a really cool new thing that we're doing. It's been interesting and exciting. So what is this thing? This project is bigger than just a road. In the past, when you've heard Sunrise Corridor mentioned, you probably thought, oh yeah, it's 212, it's a road, or maybe you didn't even know what it was. A lot of people drive through this area to get to the mountain. A lot of people just passing through. It's also one of the busiest economic hubs in our county and in the region, one of the busiest east-west freight routes in the state. A lot of people use this route to get their goods to Eastern Oregon. 39,000 vehicles pass through this corridor every single day. So in the past, a lot of the work, and this has been in process for, I don't know, 45 years, I think we're saying now, right, Commissioner Savas? 45 years, at least our commission has been saying this area needs some help. It's struggling. It's a regionally significant industrial area, a lot of large businesses, a lot of employees, 14,000 in fact, already working in this corridor every day, and there's a lot of traffic issues. So it makes sense that a lot of transportation work has been done, but this project is bigger than a road or even transportation. What we recognize is we wanted to work to co-create a vision for the future for this area because it's such an important economic hub. And it also is an important home for many people. Almost 8,000 people live here. There's 5 mobile home parks in that small project area that I just flashed up on the screen. So how can we focus on community voices, cultural history, and identify community values? How can we think about things a little bit differently? How can we zoom out and think about public health? How do we think about economic opportunities and accessible, safe infrastructure? Things like anti-displacement. How can we make sure that the people that are there now can stay there if there are investments in the corridor? Resiliency has come up a lot. So we're really zooming out and thinking bigger about this. And this vision is bigger than that. It's really about people. It's not about roads. It's about the people that live there now, that work there now, that pass through there now, and the people that will in the future. How can we make sure there's safety for everyone that are in the corridor? There are opportunities for everyone that are in the corridor, and that people can, all these uses that come together in this one place can work together well. So that's what we're really thinking about with this project. So we started this process, and the first thing we went to do is we went out to the public and we said, hey, what's working and what's not here? Pretty simple questions to be asking, but we got a lot of feedback. Mostly people were like, hey, there's too much congestion here and we can't get where we need to go, which is sort of one of the obvious ones. We've known there are problems with that. But we heard a lot of other things too. We heard about land use issues, regional connectivity, so that bigger picture of congestion and being able to move. We also heard about economic development challenges for the existing businesses and other businesses that kind of want to come in there but can't for certain reasons. We've heard about local mobility. People are not feeling safe to bike or walk or do anything other than really be in a car in this corridor, and that's a problem. We've heard about people wanting more access to the river. It's right there. You saw it in the project area. And how can we do that? They want more open space, which ties to public health. And then public health and the environment. People are worried because this area was identified as a hotspot in a recent study that was done. There's a lot of impervious surface here and not a lot of trees. So it makes sense that it would get warm. What are we going to do to protect the people that are there, as well as the environmental features in the area from things like that? So that's an example of public health that's come up. I want to go back to the road because we get a lot of questions about this and a lot of work's already been done. So just flashing this up, this is kind of where we've been with the planning around the transportation system and where we're heading. So in 2011, ODOT received a federal environmental impact statement approval from the federal government, which essentially was an 8-lane facility that would parallel Highway 212. It was a grade separated facility on big concrete structure, and that was approved. Then in 2016, they built phase 1 of the Sunrise, which is an at-grade bypass, which currently tees off into Highway 212 at 122nd. So they've already constructed that piece. Then I entered the picture. I joined the county in 2019, and my first big project was working on T2020, Metro's funding measure. And as part of that conversation, that 8-lane facility wasn't working, wasn't supported by the region. And so I set to work to talk with everyone to understand, why doesn't this make sense and why doesn't it work? And what would we need to do to develop a solution that would work? And so our whole team worked really hard to evolve that concept from an 8-lane grade separated facility to a 2-lane in each direction facility and a systems approach of improving this whole network of facilities so that everybody has a place to be in the system safely, including pedestrians and bicyclists. So we had this new concept, but we were running so fast during that T2020 process, we didn't really have the right amount of time to be able to engage with community. And we ended up getting $180 million allocated in that measure. So if that measure would have passed, would have had $180 million to move the project forward. Of course, that measure failed and we found ourselves back at ground zero. So we took a step back and thought, we really want to co-create this and build this with community. We went to the legislature and asked for $4 million to do this work, and they granted that to us. So that's what we've been operating with, the funds that were allocated by the state legislature. So now we are in 2024. We're implementing this visioning effort right now. We're doing this iterative, equitable engagement process with community, working toward finalizing this. Part of that is vetting that concept that we developed in 2020. Part of the project, not all of it. Through that process, we're developing what's called a refinement plan. We're basically taking a lot of feedback from everyone, understanding what needs to change and documenting all of that, which will inform the future process that will need to happen with the feds on that part of the project on the highway piece, which will be called a reevaluation. So all of this will tee that up. So that's how the larger transportation piece fits within this Sunrise Visioning effort. So what have we heard from community? We've had 2 big rounds of public engagement. That includes a survey translated into 4 languages, in-language focus groups. We've had in-person open houses, 2 of them that have been very successful. We have had a lot of one-on-one conversations, pop-ups. We've been doing a lot of equitable engagement, making sure we're I can't talk this morning. Removing barriers so everyone can participate in the conversation, and we've had a lot of success. What have we heard from people, though? The question is. So regional mobility, we've heard about congestion and safety issues along 212, 224. We've also heard people want capacity, especially businesses and freight that are trying to get through this corridor want to be able to pass through without sitting in congestion and traffic. And then we also wanted to see a dedication of freight-specific connections. So how can we prioritize that freight movement since it's so important? At the same time, we've heard people want improved multimodal travel options, including sidewalks and bicycle lanes. They want increased access to roadways and transit. So people want to be able to be safe here and cross over 212. So we have all of these needs of the transportation system. I've been saying Highway 212 is kind of everything to everybody in this corridor, and it's failing everyone. It's not working for anyone right now because it's basically at a standstill multiple times during the day. So we hear some pictures here. This was from an in-person event we did at Camp Withacombe that had our steering committee, which, as I told you, has a very diverse makeup. And they were side by side with our leadership cohorts. We brought in all these community members to kind of have one big conversation. It ended up being a really interesting way to do engagement and get feedback on the initial ideas. So that's what these pictures are from. And on the other topics, we heard about public health and environment. People want to make sure we're being thoughtful about the health of people, but also about wildlife. There's a lot of wildlife that is in this corridor because Rock Creek comes into the Clackamas River right here. So we want to be thoughtful about that as well. People want soccer fields, open space, parks, right? That's not a surprise. Basketball courts and access to the river. They want us to think about protecting local habitats and reducing noise, air, and water pollution. So these are some of the things around public health and environment that have come up. In economic development, the businesses that are there want to be able to stay. So they want to be protected. They want us to help them find new ways to attract partner businesses into the area. Also improve access to business sites for employees and clients. There's a lot of transportation challenges with access because of the congestion that is caused on 212. So they want us to be thoughtful about that. Regarding open space and community identity, they want us to build support for the project itself and have a coalition around this so something can actually change. They want to see change. They've been talking about it for 45 years. Make something happen. Enhance the character in the corridor. People have said it's really boring when you're going through this corridor. It's just gray. Could there be something like a mural project? Could we have some color? Could we have some art? And so that's been a really interesting conversation that we've been hearing from quite a few people. And then better access to parks and green spaces that exist and even more created. And then the last piece is land use. This is a regionally significant industrial area. That means it has a Title IV overlay from Metro. So when we started this project, we weren't saying, let's just sweep this and build a whole bunch of housing. That's never been the plan, to make big, bold, sweeping changes. But we do want to be surgical about this and thoughtful about this, especially around the new facility. And so we want to create more harmony between the uses that are already there. There's a lot of people living here and they're living next to industrial uses. Is there a chance to create a buffer zone or something like that to make these transitions a little bit easier? They want us to be thoughtful about creating more harmony between the existing land uses. And then also think, as I mentioned before, about anti-displacement strategies, especially with regards to the existing affordable housing, the kind of naturally occurring affordable housing that's in all of those mobile home parks, and also think about small businesses so they aren't displaced. So that's the high level feedback we've gotten so far. I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I just want to flash these up real quick to show you. These are some of the ideas that are coming up in map form. A lot of trees you can see here, thinking about the hot spots, but land use, development patterns, think about that. Think about the transitions between the land uses, enhancing character. Another thing that's really come up a lot is parking, both for the businesses and the residents in the corridor. It's a challenge. So how can we address that? Economic development, thinking about some code and zoning amendments to allow more flexibility. We hear people saying that the rigidity in the code sometimes causes them problems, and it causes us to lose businesses from being retained in this corridor. So that's something we want to think about. Think about design standards, make sure we're being modern, but also flexible about how we're developing those. We want to attract, retain, and grow businesses. So we have Eco Northwest online helping us develop a strategy for that. And then thinking about career education and workforce development. So how can we help foster partnerships between industry and education? Public health, there's some more trees there. Connect people to green spaces, reduce heat islands, and monitor environmental quality. So those are some of the big topics that are coming up there. Open space, connect to natural spaces, think about river access points, think about all the trail systems. So I want to say a lot of work has been done, not just on transportation in this corridor, but in other ways. So Happy Valley did the Pleasant Valley North Carver plan, which contains part of the area. There's all of this work. So a lot of that became the existing conditions for the work that we're doing. So you can see a lot of those green lines on the map. Those are already trails that are planned or trails that are existing. And we're thinking a lot about synergy. How do we connect and leverage what's already been done, making sure we're connecting the dots to create more opportunity for the people in this corridor and in this part of the region. And then local mobility, we talked a little bit about this, but a little more detail. Improve sidewalk and bicycle network. There's a lot of gaps here. There's a lack of safe crossings. Want to think about transit centers. So we have a shuttle that runs in the corridor. It's similar to what Allie was sharing. Picks people up where they are, takes them where they want to go, connects them to TriMet service. It's working really well. The county is actually running this shuttle. It's the North Clackamas Industrial Area shuttle. We want to think about creating potentially a transit hub in this corridor or a mobility hub so that TriMet transitions could happen actually in the corridor instead of having to go all the way up to Clackamas Town Center. Also thinking about other modes that could connect there, maybe like a park and ride. And then increase transit service. TriMet is planning more service in this area, but it's slow to be able to provide the need to actually make it a viable option for transit in the corridor or travel in the corridor. How can we increase that and leverage what's there to make it better, build ridership, and then potentially expand the shuttle even more? And then regional connectivity. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. So this is maybe a bit hard to read, but it is in your packet. This is the concept that was developed during T2020. This is the one we're starting with and sharing with community. So I'll just show you many of you are probably familiar with where the 212 comes into, where 224 comes into 212 at 122nd. So that's what's there now. What you can see in this drawing is the new idea is there would be a new regional connector that goes straight there and hugs the bluff. That's the 2 lanes in each direction that I mentioned before, runs parallel to Highway 212. And that would be limited access, meaning freight that just wants to move through the corridor or people that are trying to get to the mountain don't need local access would be able to jump on that facility and pass through this area. Highway 212 would still be functioning and would be made more of a complete street so that people could access this for other modes, biking, walking, also for local circulation. So Highway 212 would be improved to be more of a complete street. And the last piece of this system is the yellow line you see to the north is what we're calling a backage road. That is a local facility that would enable all the communities to the north to get where they need to go without ever having to access Highway 212. So by splitting all of these uses up and splitting the numbers up, we create this complete system that would allow a safe place for everyone to move through the corridor. So that's what I was talking about earlier. This is the 2020 design. And so things have changed a lot since then. Happy Valley's been growing really fast and a lot more traffic is passing through here than even was predicted. And so we are hearing a lot of feedback on the east and west ends of this design. So the next round of feedback will have some refinements shown on the east and west ends of this that will try to address those concerns. And I'll say the major one is really on the east end here over by Happy Valley. You can see Highway 212 was going to go underneath Sunrise, the new facility, and push the traffic from 212 up into the Rock Creek industrial area. Up there, that white dot you see is Adrian Nelson High School. Happy Valley also has another school there, and they're building another school in this area. And there's only one way in and one way out onto 172nd to the east. That causes some challenges and some safety issues for the kids up in that area. So we heard loud and clear from community, please don't push any more traffic up into this area, figure out another solution. So we anticipate there'll be some kind of an interchange approach on this east end, and we're working on those refinements now. So we'll be back with that in the next round, but that's where this is the piece we have been vetting with community so far. So I think this is my last slide. What's next? We have been doing these rounds of iterative feedback with community, and we just did our second one. And now we are pushing into what we're calling preferred scenario selection. Basically, what are the final proposals we will have for action to actually make some changes and progress toward the vision in the future. We hope to have that draft ready by the end of December. We'll go around for another big round of feedback in probably early January. Get that feedback, incorporate it into the final report and recommendations, and finalize all that and adopt it in March. That is our target. So that is what is next. And oh, I lied, I have one more slide. So we'd love for everyone to be involved. We want everyone to understand this, to give feedback to this, because all of us really depend on this corridor in one way or another. So we want to make sure everyone's included. I am the project manager for this. My email's there. You all probably know how to reach me, but happy to have a conversation. If you have questions, if you want to give input and feedback, happy to talk anytime. We also have a website, which I put the link to there, and we'll have another survey soon. When that comes up, I'll make sure you all have the information. And that is all I have. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, comments? Okay, Mayor Buck.
Yes, thanks, Jamie. Just one question. Is in talking about the new like additional roadway and all of that, what's the kind of right-of-way situation out there?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mayor Buck. So some right-of-way was purchased back when they did their original FEIS by ODOT. So there is some right-of-way that has already been purchased, and there will need to be more purchased prior to construction. My understanding is that that process will happen with ODOT when they move forward with the reevaluation. So that kind of the right-of-way acquisition will happen during that process. And one other piece of that, it's tied to that, it's maybe a little bit different. The original proposal was one big thing, right? 8-lane facility, grade separated. It was like all or nothing. Do you want this? Do you not want this? And it was really expensive. This new design is being developed into phases so that you can take chunks of it and implement it when you have the funding available. And we do think this will be a patchwork quilt of funding required to implement this vision. So we will be working on segmenting out what we can do and when. I think I mentioned to you all before, and you heard from us here, we have applied for $15 million at Metro within the RIFA bond step 1 category for this project, which would take that middle section forward through 100% design. That would allow a lot of independent utility. If we were able to get that middle section constructed, it would remove 2 of the intersections on 212, which have stoplights. That causes a lot of stop and go and queuing, which causes or contributes to a lot of the congestion issues. So part of that will be segmenting this out, figuring out how we can phase it in and break it into bite-sized pieces so we can fund those and actually get this thing constructed eventually.
Okay, so is there going to be any, will there be business displacement from the right-of-way acquisition, and what's the general support of the community along the current corridor of this work in general?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question too. Very, very minimal displacement because there is already an FEIS that is in place, and that right-of-way is preserved as part of the FEIS back from 2010. This alignment is actually less impactful in most places because it's smaller. There will be impacts. I'm not going to, mince words about that. There will be impacts, but they will be pretty minor as far as displacement. And the business community has been very involved in this whole conversation. We have a business focus group that's running. We're having regular conversations with many of the businesses. And also we have Dan Achipenti from Pacific Seafood sitting on our steering committee, as well as Daryl Woods from Safeway Distribution Center. So we're trying to make sure everyone's at the table so everyone can give their feedback and be a part of influencing the outcomes, and that, so that we can have everyone on board. But like anything, it's never going to be perfect for everyone, right? It's we're trying to thread a very difficult needle here. So we're working really hard to do that. But yeah, there will be impacts. They should be minimal.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, that's a great question, Mayor Buck. Back in phase one or prior to phase one, this was a live urban renewal district that was collecting funds, and there was a match required for right of way and purchase, and we overmatched it substantially for phase one. And I think we have, so to speak, you know, basically an understanding that theoretically that for phase two, that our contribution should be recognized as, you know, the past contribution should be recognized into phase two. Secondly, that issue about impacts to business, I think there is far more impacts of doing nothing than there is of doing something. And I think that's the clamoring we're hearing. We're hearing you say, build it for the businesses, everyone, just do it, just do it. And that's because this 40 plus years, as Jamie mentioned, of this uncertainty and that land sitting there just as greenfield waiting is not helping businesses at all or anyone. So it doesn't, as Jamie said it well, this serves no modality. It serves no one in its current state. And that's why everyone wants to see something happen. So I know we're short on time, but Mayor Milch, please chime in.
Thank you for clarifying the issue about, you know, that it's not just a transportation project, because I think that is a widespread misunderstanding in the community. So as you're developing the area south of all this transportation section, what occurs to me it's not a real self-contained community in terms of having all the amenities you would need. You don't have very many destination businesses. You have a Safeway distribution center, but I don't know if you have a Safeway supermarket. So you want it to be a place, I think, where people could actually live. I don't know how many acres or square miles this whole area is, but other than the separation of the schools, which is very problematic, you know, I can see the potential for this being a self-contained community where most needs could be met without crossing the 212 at all, if it were developed in that way. So I'm glad people are thinking in terms of parks and access to the river and all the rest. It could be a nice place for people to reside and to walk and to bike if they could just avoid all those big trucks up to the north.
Great. Good comments. Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. Two questions for you. I think as we look at this and we look at this region with a patchwork of incorporated communities versus unincorporated communities, I'm curious what the timeline and process is for incorporation. Is the city of Happy Valley thinking about incorporating this area, and is that going to be a component of this first phase of the plan or a second phase?
Great question. So this is in the urban planning area for Happy Valley. Some of these parcels have already been annexed into the city of Happy Valley. We do not have a broad strategy for integration or implementation of annexation for this area at this time. We also do not have plans to see large changes in density or growth or development in the way, like if this were a greenfield subdivision or something that we're going to come in, right? It would need to be implemented and integrated and annexed prior to being served with services. All of that already exists in this area. So we do not have a plan for that at this time, but it is in Happy Valley's growth area, and they have the ability to annex this area at any time.
Okay, and you touched a little bit on my second question. You say there's no plans for new growth or density, not even changes in the zoning patterns, because I think about Mayor Milch's question. It's hard to have a self-contained community that relies on transit or that can use transit and is walkable and bikeable if it doesn't have the density required to support those services. And I worry about creating an island community of single-family homes that aren't served by really important resources and have to go travel long distances and don't have the facilities of a city to be able to think about that long-term planning. So is rezoning for mixed use development and other more dense forms of development to allow for these types of opportunities within a self-contained area on the table, or is that not something that's included in this plan?
Great question. So I think what we've heard loud and clear is there's already about 8,000 people that live here, but they deal with a lot of challenges because they live in a regionally significant industrial area. Title IV overlay protects this whole area, right? So this is really for jobs and industry, but things were created in a way, right, where we have 8,000 people living there. But what we've heard is don't add more housing in this area if you can. You know, if you need to, we can figure it out, but it doesn't create a great living environment for people, as you all have pointed out. There is a Fred Meyer in the corridor that people can access, but there are challenges with getting there. And there's a lot of lack of mobility in the corridor. So what we're trying to think about is how can we support the community that's living there today, make their accommodations as comfortable as possible, minimize the impacts, and then really focus on bringing the jobs into this corridor, supporting the businesses and creating more jobs, and making sure that the employees that will be working there will have a way to get to work other than driving their car. So thinking about transit, thinking about micro transit, thinking about making all these connections for bike and ped. So improving what's there, but not adding a ton of new density. I would say we are open to rezoning in this area for potentially could be open to a multi-use zoning or something like that. But I think that the focus is really on industry, and there's a lot of restrictions because it is a Title IV regionally significant industrial area. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. I am pretty troubled by making such significant investments without pairing it with more housing. I think we all know we're in a housing crisis that stems from a lack of supply. And when we're trying to make communities more accessible by transit, more bikeable, more walkable, I think density is something that comes hand in hand with that and helps support, like Mary Milch was saying, self-contained community. So
Yeah.
I find that a little bit troubling, but I'm also the newest one sitting here. So there are likely things that I'm not seeing. So I'm happy to
Yeah,
continue
and
the
I
conversation.
really appreciate that thought, and it totally makes sense, the concern that you're raising. I think the other piece of this that's missing from this presentation is that Happy Valley is, of course, one of the fastest growing cities in the state. They have 2/3 of the greenfield UGB area that's not been developed yet available to them, but they have challenges because they don't have this infrastructure. Because this isn't functioning well, they can't build that housing. They're going to be able to build house 44,000 people with this investment. So there is density in housing going in that will result from this investment. It's just not right here in this industrial part of the corridor. It's actually going to be in Happy Valley, but it is dependent upon getting this infrastructure constructed. Does that make sense?
That does.
Okay.
I appreciate
And I'm happy to
that.
have offline conversation with you. Welcome. It's nice to meet you, and I would love to talk with you if you want to learn more, and I can share more of what we've been doing and how we kind of got to where we are with this approach.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
I know we're a little bit behind and maybe we can make an adjustment on the agenda, but I think it's worth pointing this out. I think both Counselor and the mayor's comments are spot on, and not recognizing what this landscape actually is. And this project area, as defined on the map, is very tight, but on both sides of it, especially to the north, there's a lot of density. And I'm sure if Counselor Sherman was here, we'd be talking about some of that high density development that still has no transit, right? The saying is, we'll build the density, they've built the density, and yet there's still no transit and no services. So one thing I will say, and this is probably the most powerful thing I can say here today on this topic, is that when we took just a few weeks ago, we took the Joint Committee on Transportation for a tour of this area with ODOT and others. And I was stunned by how many comments were made by the legislators who grew up in this metro region, who assumed it was still farmland and not much development out there. And they were shocked. They were shocked at how much housing was there, how much density had been taking place. And yet we didn't have any services out there. So the dangerous aspects of this. So I really think that maybe a tour of us is overdue to bring us all up to speed. To see it is to believe it. And then you recognize that how much housing is already there. Though it might not be exactly in the project area, it's bisected by this corridor. This project area bisects all that housing and density. And no way to get from north to south safely at all. It has to be done in a car. That's the only way of doing it safely. I know we're past time. I appreciate the comments. And Trent, turn it back to you. Do you want to make an adjustment on the agenda, or what are your thoughts?
I defer to you, and the TPAC team is already here in the wings. And so TPAC, if y'all could keep it tight, then I can start bringing over the next Metro group who's talking about garbage and recycling.
Okay, Jamie, turn it over to you, I think.
Yeah, real quick, we can tag
Jeff.
team. We'll be very quick. Jeff O in Clackamas County, and then I'll pass it over to Jamie. A few items in your packet for the TPAC update you've already touched on, so no need to really dwell on those 2 pages in your packet. The brief thing I would mention quickly is, this is a very live time right now, this week, next week, and next month for the RUFA projects, which we've already touched on as well. So there is a lot of movement there. Projects are being evaluated for step 1 and for step 2. All of our teams around the county and all of your communities are refining potential step 2 projects that are due in November. So this is a very kind of live and active time here between TPAC meetings. I'll probably just pause there and of course say our contact information is in those 2 pages. We're of course always here to help and support. And I'll just pass it over to Jamie.
Hey, thanks. And you should totally dwell on the TPAC report in your packet. That report is pure gold. Jamie Lorenzini, City of Happy Valley, representing Clackamas Cities to TPAC. The only thing I'd add is that specific to the regional bond projects, and there are 2 in Clackamas County, those projects are going through an eligibility screening right now. And if projects proceed to be eligible for the bond, they'll go through an evaluation. And those evaluation results are tentatively scheduled for presentation at the December TPAC and JPAC meetings. So keep your eyes out. You're going to be seeing more information in the very near future. I also have one administrative update I'd like to share. Currently, Team TPAC includes Clackamas representatives to TPAC and the city's representatives to TPAC. Specific to the city's representatives, that includes me, Dana Webb from Oregon City, and Will Farley from Lake Oswego. Periodically, we have the need to update our roster to TPAC. Beginning next month, I'm going to be taking a step back from TPAC for an exciting opportunity. And Dana Webb and Will Farley will begin co-leading representation of Clackamas Cities to Team TPAC. And they'll be bringing forth some additional alternates, which is an exciting opportunity to engage more communities in the Metro process. So this is a really great movement for Team TPAC, and I'm excited for you to see new faces beginning next month. So thank you.
Where are we?
Well, I would like to just introduce them to talk about our next topic here, which is about, I'll let them take it from here.
Good morning. Thank you, Trent. My name is Marta McGuire, and I am Metro's Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department Director. And I have here with me Esty Siegel and Louise Sandoval, who are principals at Metro. We appreciate the opportunity to engage with you all today on the Regional System Facilities Plan, which outlines investments for improvements to our garbage and recycling system. Some of you have had the opportunity to engage on this work in your role on the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium, the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, as well as local presentations that we've been doing at city councils and commissions. So some of this will look familiar. We have a brief presentation and hopefully some time for some questions as well. So I'll go ahead and jump in. If we go to the next slide. Currently, our work in the garbage and recycling system is guided by the 2030 Regional Waste Plan, which is an ambitious plan for managing the region's garbage and recycling with the key priorities listed here. And we partner with your communities to move this work forward. We are here to discuss one of the key priorities of that plan, which is focused on ensuring equitable and affordable services for everyone. To address this priority, the Regional System Facilities Plan takes a holistic view at the regional waste system to address long-standing gaps. Next slide. A good example of our current system is the Metro South Public Transportation. This facility opened in April 1983. It was originally designed to host an incinerator for the facility and was expected to handle up to 800 tons of waste every day. Fast forward to today, Metro South processes more than 300,000 tons a year and many days handling more than 1,000 tons. The challenge to this site is daily, and we do our best at operating an overburdened facility in a safe and efficient manner. However, to keep high quality materials out of the landfill, we need more space to separate out recyclables, reusable, and repairable items and ensure safety, including traffic flow, and redevelopment of the site is needed. Metro South is just one example of how over the last 40 years, the garbage and recycling needs of the region have changed. Some people have easy disposal options if they live close to a Metro transfer station, but many people in the region do not. And as the region grows, more investment is needed to ensure that everyone, no matter where they live, has equal access to garbage and recycling services. Next slide. We also know that we live in a place where people care about the environment and are willing to spend more resources to keep valuable resources out of the landfill. Here is just a picture of a local recycling event that was hosted by James Recyclings just last month. People waited in line for more than half an hour to recycle items that cannot be collected at the curb and paid $3 a bag. This is just one example of our values in our region in practice. Next slide. To address the aging system, Metro Council directed us to complete a system facilities plan to take a look at the region's facilities to identify investments needed to improve access and services for everyone. This will be a 20-year vision to provide a roadmap for future investment, really a concept plan to identify these investments for the region to pursue, similar to as what Jamie was describing, a phased approach to set direction, and any proposed investments will have many decision points along the way before full implementation. It also calls out areas where there is more study needed. Next slide. Over the last 18 months, Metro engaged with local government, industry, community, and tribal governments across the region, hosted an international symposium, and engaged with Metro Council to develop a set of investments. Each phase essentially built a chapter of the plan. It was an iterative process, starting with the values and outcomes. This slide here shows the many touch points that we've had throughout the planning process, including the advisory committees, as well as roundtables with local governments and organizations and businesses in the region. And we are now in the final phase of plan development. Next slide. You can think of the plan outline like a project roadmap, and here you see an outline of all the chapters that make up the plan. Today, we're going to give you just a brief overview of the investment strategy and financing approach, and I will turn it over to Esty now.
Thanks, Marta. Good morning, everybody. Esty Siegel, Principal Planner at Metro. Yeah, due to the limited time today, I wanted to just jump right to it and introduce the 4 key investment areas in the draft plan and really encourage you to take a look at the full plan to understand how these were developed to address gaps that were identified in the first 3 phases of the project from the extensive engagement with community that Marta just highlighted on the prior slide. But these are the 4 key investment areas: community drop-off depots, reuse and repair, organics, and commercial transfer stations. Projects within these areas will enhance public and commercial facilities, food waste processing, and support reuse and repair organizations over the next 20 years. And I'm just going to give a little flavor of what is contained within the full plan in the next couple slides. So the vision for community drop-off depots is to fill gaps that the community identified, including providing more locations across the region to drop off items for reuse, recycling, hazardous waste, and self-haul garbage all in one place. These facilities will be designed for public customers driving cars and small trucks apart from commercial haulers to be able to easily separate material for recovery and to encourage waste reduction over more and more garbage to landfill. You can see what an example of a one-stop drop-off called an Eco Center in Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada here. This is the approximate location of the 6 community depots envisioned in the system facilities plan and some of the modeling estimates for drive times, recovery, and people to be served at these facilities as compared to the baseline today. The plan includes investments in a new reuse warehouse and reuse mall in the region. Both projects would be planned and implemented in partnership with existing reuse organizations and businesses. And then there'll be a third investment in this area, which would be a sustainable reuse funding program to support businesses in recovering and diverting more materials from landfill. Food represents the single largest component of the region's disposal waste stream and is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Metro Central plays a crucial role in transferring and pre-processing food waste before it reaches an end market. And this facility today handles 70% of the region's food waste. To improve the transfer and processing capacity, Metro will continue to invest in Metro Central as a regional hub for receiving residential and commercial organics from haulers. Also, as part of this plan, Metro will develop public-private partnerships to support additional organics hubs in areas of the region where there are the greatest gaps. You can see some where the approximate locations here. Metro Council expressed support for repurposing over time the 2 Metro commercial transfer stations, Central and South, to focus on providing the services that are more challenging to provide for the private sector, such as self-haul and organics transfer services. And because the plan is proposing to convert Metro South to a community drop-off depot, this would create a service gap for commercial haulers in the southern part of the region. So the plan proposes that Metro take a phased approach to seek to authorize a new commercial transfer station or develop a public-private partnership to build a new facility for commercial haulers in the southern part of the region. There are 2 important areas that need more time for research, assessment, and discussion: wet waste tonnage flow and private facility regulation. And the plan includes 2 actions in these areas. First, to study the impact of lowering or removing Metro's tonnage guarantee, including evaluation of the current wet waste tonnage allocation program. Secondly, to address options for private facility regulation to best serve the public interest. These actions are detailed more in the plan and would begin when the plan is adopted. This is a map that just presents a visualization of all the facilities and investment projects proposed in the draft plan. It also summarizes the overall benefits of the plan. And just to note that the facilities outlined with a gray circle and dashed lines on the map do not have specific locations determined yet and would be cited in the future. The proposed investments are estimated to cost about $273 million over the 20-year implementation period. For comparison, the original scenarios that the project presented at a symposium last fall, September 2023, ranged from $280 million to more than $800 million. So this is significantly less than those. The investments will be financed through revenue bonds with debt paid off over 20 years. The estimated increase in the garbage bill for a typical single-family household in the region over the next 2 decades is $1.50 to $2 per month on average, and in today's dollars. This stays within what we heard people would be willing to pay for increased services after last fall's symposium. And again, it's important to note that this is a 20-year vision plan, and the specific costs and timing of each project would be determined in Metro's annual budgeting process. The annual budget development and fee setting will be guided by the solid waste fee policy with input from the Regional Waste Advisory Committee. So there are 2 ways to provide feedback on the draft plan: leave a public comment or take an online survey. Both of these opportunities can be found on the project website and have been open since October 1st and will be open through the end of the month, October 31st. Input received will help shape the final plan to be considered for adoption by Metro Council in December and set the foundation for future work to make the plan a reality. So if there is time, we just wanted to see if you had any questions about the draft plan and any input you would like us to share with Metro Council, in addition to what you can leave on the survey or public comment form. I will stop sharing now. Hand it back to the facilitator. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. One question I have, we have the franchised haulers that use South Station, for example, the people that drive through our streets and pick up our local garbage and haul it off. And then the other commercial type user that frequents this facility, probably, I will say at least in numbers, I assume, is contractors that are bringing in, building materials from remodeling a home or subdivision work or whatnot, overwhelmed with how much traffic goes through there that is like that. So what do you know what percentage? They're probably not likely gonna use a a single consumer type drop-off facility like you pictured there. But have you any idea the scale of which that growth in that particular area exists? I mean, is it growing greater than the haulers?
In terms of self-haul services to the transfer stations,
Yes.
so, and I'll just for context, so we talk about commercial haulers, which are the route trucks that you see at your house that pick up your items curbside. And then we talk about self-haul, which includes residential customers or also small businesses that may be having a cleanup business or contractors that are doing on the job sites. We have continually seen an increase in self-haul to both of our stations over the last 10 years. We manage more than 500,000 transactions annually. The idea of the community depots is that they would both provide that self-haul service for those smaller business generators and residents, as well as opportunities for reuse, repair, and recycling of items. So it would give us the opportunity to recycle more because there would be more space. Metro South now manages both of those uses, both public as well as small business and commercial. And if you've been to Metro South, they do an amazing job with a site that was not designed to manage that many customers. So the idea of moving those commercial haulers off site would give us the opportunity to do some redesign to that site to make it easier to get people through in a more convenient manner.
Yeah, well, thank you for that response. Yes, I was talking about the self-haulers, and one thing over the years, I know a number of them, contractors, and one of the complaints I hear from them, not always, not currently, but at times, is that they have to either drive so far because because of some environmental concerns, Metro won't take their waste, right? It might have asbestos or it might have some other material, so they feel, and they've stressed this, is that we have to drive so far, right? And that's not fuel efficient, right? It's not climate friendly that they drive so far when they get rejected at the local station. So I just hope that we're being mindful that making it convenient for all of them is also something that perhaps would have a climate benefit and a traffic benefit, because if we have those folks driving so far in remote areas of the region, it's not a benefit to anyone.
Appreciate that.
Any other thoughts, questions? Okay, thank you for your presentation. Trent?
Thank you both. Lost my mouse. Just mindful that there's that comment period, so I would encourage you to participate in that. It's a big part of why they're coming here today and a big part of the presentation at JPAC this week. So a lot of good comments here that's being shared. Just would encourage you to participate there, and I think that's what they're hoping you would do as well. Yes?
And I'll just add, we're also offering local briefings. We were at the city of Milwaukee last week and city of Beaverton last night. So if your jurisdiction is interested in having a presentation and providing direct feedback, we're happy to do that. We'll also be at the Metro Policy Advisory Committee later this month.
Excellent. And Esty, is this a link to participate in the public comment?
Yes, it's right to the project website. Scroll down, take a survey, leave a public comment, read the plan there online. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
We have about 11 minutes left, and there's a topic that we want to bring up here, and I'm bringing in Jamie Stastny as well, who can also help with our MTAC update if we get that far. This issue is about the Vision Commission that Metro is working to seat, and there's an application process that there is underway, and many of you have maybe received an email from Metro or the Impact team, various staff who are sending out that application. I've also included at least an email of that information in your packet today. So Jamie, can you give us a little bit more information about what this is? And of course, Councilor Lewis from Metro, you're here if you would like to add anything from what we shared here today.
Thanks, Trent. Yes, so Metro is embarking on updating the future vision. Many of us have been referring to this as a 2040 plan update. And this is kind of a precursor for updating that piece of it, the map that everyone's familiar with that have the town center areas identified and the growth areas identified. But before we do that, we need to update this vision. So this Future Vision Commission will be seated. The deadline to apply is October 20th. We just wanted to make sure everyone had visibility of this opportunity, and happy to get more information if you have questions. There is information on the website about what exactly this group will be undertaking and how they will approach it. But I'll keep it short since we're short on time. Councilor Lewis, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The opportunity is like big. It's a year and a half of meetings, and it is doing deep dives not only into the current plans we have, but looking at all of the different systems and how they get incorporated into future planning. Looking obviously to update the 2040 plan, which, you know, gave us kind of the hub and spoke, gave us the way that we talk about town centers. We definitely want big visionary folks as well as tacticians. So hopefully some of you will consider there are a few local government positions.
Councilor Lewis, can I just ask a question? Is there going to be any opportunity to, with all this work being done on this commission, to take a look at what's really working and what's not working as a basis for improving and refining and advancing the next vision?
I don't think it's going to be an audit committee to the extent of, you know, grounding the committee and everybody in what was the 2040 plan, what actually took off from there and what kind of fell flat. That'll be definitely an entry to the work. But in terms of an audit of the 2040 plan, this committee is not that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting an audit, certainly by any means. It's more about, I would say that there are some things that simply might be aspirational, but have proved not to be practical. And the commute shed is a big factor in that, right? I think the whole idea with the 2040 vision plan, essentially not the whole idea, but a lot of it was prevent urban sprawl or prevent sprawl. And yet sprawl is by the commute shed traffic that's happening all across the region, sprawl is happening considerably. So I think we need to make sure that we address that from a transportation standpoint, which is having, again, significant climate impacts as well.
Yep.
So,
Worth bringing in.
all right. Do you know if you have a number of applicants yet, or what does that look like?
I don't know the number that we currently have. I know we're halfway through the recruitment period, and we expect the bulk of them to always come in at the end. So we need more applicants.
Okay. Okay. Any particular walk of life or type of person or experience level or geographic, or what's lacking right now in the applicants?
I don't have access to the application pool. They go through a staff process, but the committee makeup does include a set of things that we're trying to balance. We obviously are going to look for regional representation. There's a requirement that we have an academic. There's a requirement that we have somebody with an outside of the region perspective. And we've slotted some specific local government, local elected type seats as well. So that's leaving a lot of opportunity for those additional seats to be regular people, folks who are active in their communities, people who bring technical professional expertise.
Yeah, I since I heard this, I've been trying to encourage people to apply. Is there a time of day that you all foresee in which, I think common question that people ask me when I encourage them to apply, is it mornings, evenings, weekends? What's it going to be?
I have no idea. I'm not even sure we know. I expect that we'll probably do a survey of availability. Because this is a committee that's described in charter, the charter is explicit that this committee cannot be compensated. So we know that that poses, you know, oftentimes we do stipends for big committees, big commitments like this. This can't be, which means that sometimes we can't offer childcare if we can't say, I don't know what we're going to do about that challenge. Metro likes to do a lot of meetings from 4 to 6 p.m. can't say that's going to definitely be the time, but after work, maybe mornings, hopefully not.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other thoughts, folks? Just again, encourage anyone you can think of that might be interested to apply that can afford the time and commitment to that. So 1.5 years, you said, correct?
Yeah, like 18 months base. It could even go longer, but we're hoping the work wraps up in 18 months.
Okay, great.
And I would just flag, we have the opportunities here at Clackamas County through a group like this, the C4 Metro Subcommittee, or even the larger coordinating committee, where there's opportunities to coordinate to the name. So if there is a member from the C4 group who's here, it would be ideal it would be an easy way to provide updates into this group where there is an opportunity to coordinate and help that particular individual participate in the Vision Commission. And if there's not, then I will just commit that the C4 staff will help to figure out a way to bring updates as appropriate. And perhaps through Councilor Lewis with your Metro connection, that might be the approach we have to take. But just want to flag that we'll be looking for opportunities to bring updates here because we do think that it will be of interest to this group.
Great. So Trent, we pretty well went down the agenda. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have one more final thing. It's an update from the MTAC staff. So that's the group that follows the Impact Committee, different from the Vision Commission. So got a couple minutes here left, and that's Jamie and Laura.
I think we could be pretty quick. You have a report in your packet that is passed down from our MTAC experience outlining how the last conversation went. We've been very focused on the urban growth boundary decision that Metro Council will be considering in December, and made a recommendation to support that moving forward with some technical recommendations as well included, such as the suggestion that the industrial lands piece should be further examined by a task force to understand how to align better the pro forma that is being used with market realities. There is an assumption within the urban growth management package so far that we have enough industrial lands to get us through for the next 20 years. There is a portion of Sherwood's expansion that does include some industrial lands, and they did some elevated analysis about site criteria to show that large sites are needed for industrial, but we think there are some other issues that need to be worked through. That recommendation was forwarded on by MPAC as well for Metro Council consideration. We're asking that happen next year. So we're not just waiting until the next UGB cycle to look at some of these challenges. So that was one of the pieces that moved forward. And that's our update, unless you have anything to add, Laura.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I just want to acknowledge that both our staff, the city staff that serve on MTAC, TPAC, all these committees, and serve here at C4, just the outstanding work and passion and brilliance you all bring to the table. So I know there'd be a rejuggling, it sounds like, with Jamie, but I'm excited for the opportunities for everyone, and more to come on that. But I just want to do a shout out to all of you for all the great work you all have done to keep us informed. So thank you.
Thank you. And as we close up, I just want to flag that we're entering November and December, which is both holiday season and election season. So calendars can get a little wiggly when these two things combine. And so just want to ask for y'all's patience as we navigate, middle of the month calendars, post-election attendance, and things like that. So such is the way of a group with elected officials. And so good luck to you all in November. And then we'll see you at the next C4 meeting.
Thank you all.